Hello and welcome to an incredible tutorial from specialfeatures.net. My name is Marco Lawrence and this is what we will be creating. Let's start the process by exporting our fluid simulation to Modo. If you don't know how to get into this stage, just check out my previous Blender fluid simulation tutorial and everything will be revealed to you in full detail. Awesome. Let's start by actually exporting that fluid mesh. So choose your domain, go to File, Export, Wavefront, OBJ, decide on a folder. This is the folder I've used before. Yes, I have done this already, but I'm just going to tell you how to do it yourselves. Selection only, animation, apply modifiers, get rid of this stuff, and keep objects as OBJ objects. These settings work really well with Modo, I have found. So press export and be prepared to wait for a little bit. I'll press cancel. Great, so that's us done with the fluid itself. Let's start looking at the particles. Choose your icosphere drops and your icosphere floats. And then now it's probably a good idea to go into the beginning of the animation. Let's do frame 1. Go to File, Export, Wavefront OBJ, go to the folder where you want to go to, and then again settings, selection only, animation, apply modifiers, get rid of this junk, and objects as OBJ objects. And click export, and yeah, prepare to wait for a while. I'll click cancel. Great, so that's our drops and floats exported. Now tracers, we can use a little bit of a different technique. You can choose the tracers, make sure again you're on the first frame where those tracers particles appear. So that will be frame 1. And File, Export, Wavefront OBJ, you guessed it. Navigate to a good folder. This time we want to go selection only, not the animation. Apply modifiers, get rid of all this stuff, and objects as OBJ objects, and then export OBJ. I will choose cancel. So instead of exporting the whole animation, this time we exported actually just the lump of icospheres that have been attached to those tracers particles. Why can we do that this time is because we chose here in the domain that we will have 10,000 tracer particles in the scene all the time. So we can use this technique because the number stays the same. This technique won't work with the drops or the floats since the number of those particles varies quite drastically. Go back to your icosphere tracers and let's export something new. So export. Now we want to export something different. So go to user preferences, go to add-ons, go to import export, and now you want to find something that says new tech MDD format. So click on that, activate it, get out of it, and then frame 1, you see those particles the first time they appear, icosphere traces selected, file, export, lightwave point cache MDD. Click on that one, put it in the tracers folder, and yes, it's already there again. Choose how your frame settings were, start frame, end frame, that's perfect. Export MDD, and yeah, go for another cup of tea. I'll press cancel since I've done that already. So that's us done. Let's jump into Modo and see what we can do with all this stuff. Here we are in Modo, and yes, it's 601. I'm really tempted of upgrading to 701, but yeah, I have to gather some dineros first, and that's why you might see some adverts in this tutorial. So yeah, please understand. Okay, let's get the fluid mesh itself into Modo. We're going to use a couple of tools to do that. So first of all, you would need to get this old Fredrik Stenson's mesh sequence import plugin. Unfortunately, it's not on his official website anymore, so this is a forum thread where you can find it. Also, you would need to get an awesome plugin from Moodsoid. It's called emReader, and it is pretty cool, I have to say. So download perhaps a trial version. If you get super excited already, get the real thing. I recommend it. You can watch tutorials, everything's explained in a wonderful way, so you get kicking very, very soon. And the last thing you need to get is this sort of a renaming utility program where you can rename file names in bulk. Here's a little bit of a hint. Bulk rename utility works for me. I have no idea what to get on a Mac, but I'm sure you can figure it out. So those 3 things you would need to get. Go back into Modo. Once you've installed everything you need to do, find the Animate tab and go to your Mesh Sequence tab here. We're going to import our fluid in different sections. This is quite memory heavy plugin, so I find that if I import stuff in batches, my machine can start handling things a little bit better, and I have control on how much stuff is actually on the scene at the same time. So I'm going to start importing stuff from frame 1 to frame 20. And then this here means what in the file name designates the division between the name and the frame number. Here we decide which frame we're going to start the import from. Sub D sounds good. Let's import sequence. Let's just find where we put this stuff. Fluid OBJ. So click on the first frame that you want to choose on this patch and then open. And then it asks for the last frame in this batch. And we're going to go to 20. And now it says scene load was unsuccessful. Why it says that is because the Mesh Sequence plugin doesn't actually understand more than 4 digits there in the end. So this is where we need our bulk rename utility. There we go. So navigate to the folder where you put those files again. So great. So click on the first one, shift click on the last one so you have everything selected. Here you see the new name. So you can remove some digits here. There we go. So we have those 4 numbers left. That's what our Mesh Sequence plugin will understand. And we can write that prefix in again. So this is our new name. Rename. Okay. Fantastic. So now, let's see what happens. We'll try that again. Import sequence. Fluid. The first frame that we want. Open. And then the last frame that we want, 20, open. I kind of think that static meshes will be fine. So, okay. And at least I have to keep on clicking through all the 20 frames to get them imported into the scene. And then my machine will think for a little bit. And yes, that starts looking really, really cool. So I have this old fluid folder here. So I'll just take that out. We have to repeat this step until we create all the batches that we want. So I'll start doing that from 21 to 40. Again, we have that underscore in between the actual name of the file and the number of the frame. Now this time we start the importing from frame number 21. Import sequence, find that 21 frame. Open, and import sequence, find that frame 40. Open, static meshes, okay, and click through, and this is how far we have gone. So now I'm going to pause this video for a little bit when I import all the batches I want, and you can carry on doing the same. We're back. So we have all these batches of the fluid animation here on our items list, and if we just start scrubbing through the timeline, we see that here we have our awesome fluid animation in Modo. Now we can start housekeeping a little bit. Let's put 100 frames here. So that's our full animation there. Now let's start thinking about our tracer particles and what we're going to do with them. Go to File, Import, Tracers. This time we want to unclick the static meshes. There we go. That's our tracers particles in the scene. But now if we scrub through, nothing happens with them. How exciting. So now we have to actually use the MDD deformer. Right click on the mesh, find add deformer, influences, MDD influence. And then we want to go into the right folder again, find that MDD file that you just created, double click, and now it's created it. And now you see it is just completely messed up. But that's okay, we can fix it. So first of all, we need to rotate the mesh a little bit along the x-axis, 90. And then we want to scale it along the y-axis, minus 100. And that looks a lot better. So now our tracers particles are in the scene as well. Wow. Now that's just amazing. So now let's start thinking about those drops and floats particles. Let's go into our empty mesh, right click, change type, go to Moodsoid emReader, then click on that one and rename it. I'll call it drops floats and enter. Let's go into the file tab, browse into the folder where you have your drops and floats particle OBJ sequence. Double click on that. And now if we look at what is actually happening, nothing is going on, nothing has changed. That's because we need to animate this index value here. So go into your first frame, click on that keyframe, go to your frame number 100, and here it's gonna get quite heavy for our computer in a little bit, so I'm just gonna turn off everything else, so perhaps it's gonna be a little bit easier. Go to 100 here and enter, and then we're gonna have to wait. So here we have our particles now in Modo. Now one more thing we have to do with the animation. Let's go into the frame where we first see those particles appear. Go into your graph editor for the animation, click on that first frame, change the slope into linear out, go into your last frame and change it into linear in. So you have a linear path there. So now we have those particles in, so let's go again on a little bit of an easier frame here in the beginning perhaps. There we go. Let's turn that one on and let's turn our traces on as well. And now we're ready to start adding a little bit of materials to it. So let's go into our shader tree. Let's see what's happening here. So our fluid mesh has been already imported as item masks. So add layer, group. Let's put them all in one group. Move them into that same group. Let's rename that to fluid. And now let's move into our render tab and find a nice angle for our camera. So we go move the animation here, choose your camera, and then transform, sync to view. And now we have a good view of it. So now this is where Modo is just awesome. You just choose a water material and just drag it into your group and move that above everything. And there we have our fluid already nicely done there. So let's choose that material, change some settings, material trans. Let's put absorption distance 250 millimeters so we can see through it a little bit better. So that looks pretty cool already. Now we can do the same thing to our drops and floats. Right click, create item mask. Go to your shader tree, and again we can assign the same material to that one. And there we go. That's how easy it is. What I like to do is I like to take that, drag it above the base shader, and then assign a separate shader to it. So I can assign different settings to it. So I like to take these out. Let's get the reflection out. Keep the refraction and take occlusion out. So it might be a little bit easier for the rendering time. So let's go here. Let's go to the material. I'll change my reflection amount to 60. So we get a little bit brighter particles there. We can do the same thing on our icosphere tracers. Right click, create an item mask. And now we have our tracers. I'll just rename that into something else. Tracers. Great. Move that above the base shader and assign a material to it. Drag the water material into that. And change the setting here. I want to do the same thing. Reflection amount 60. And then I'll assign another shader to that group. And let's take all these out. Keep the refraction rays. And this is looking pretty good. Let's go back to our items menu. Turn on all the fluids. We have everything on here. So we can start looking at a little bit render settings. You can choose your own framing here. I'll just keep it a little bit small and 72. works well there. And this is starting to be quite nice. Let's just change one more thing, the environment, and change it into physically based daylight. And that's pretty cool. Now let's go into some sort of a frame where we see the full picture. And here we have our fluid simulation in its full glory. Let's see if we can change the camera a little bit. And when it gets heavy like this, you can always go to your items tab and turn off the drops and floats, for example. So it gets a little bit lighter. You can move your camera anywhere you want. And that's starting to look pretty nice. So we have a full view. And then when you're pleased with that, go to a lighter frame, turn on your drops and floats, and then you're good to go. So then you can just go to render animation, choose how long you want it to be, 100 frames, okay. Choose your destination. Let's do a new folder, test 4, and fluid PNG, and then save. And then we'll start rendering. So I'll pause the recording and I'll get back when it has finished this. Let's just see when the particles start coming in so they look nice and crisp. There we go. We're starting to get some nice action there. Great, so I'll be back when the rendering is done. So the render's finished. Here we are in After Effects. So let's just make this project a little bit nicer still. Find the folder where you rendered your PNG sequence, drag it into After Effects, and then right click on it. Let's go to Interpret Footage, Main, click Ignore here on the alpha, and then set the right frame number. 24 is what we used. Now we're ready to drag this on that little film icon. And we created a nice little comp for our fluid animation. So there it is. We have 24 frames here. So now we're ready to add some motion blur into it. Go to Effect, right click anywhere on that field, go to Time, Force Motion Blur. Works pretty cool here. Choose 16 perhaps. Let's put 360 here. And let's click on that film stack and then choose that one. So we have that anti-aliased line here. And After Effects is thinking, and there we go. Nicely motion blurred fluid simulation. So we can kind of scrub through and see how it looks like. Looks pretty good. So I'll just render this out and I'll show you the results. And then we'll be back. So this is what you can achieve by working together with Blender and Modo. The processes are pretty simple. So have fun, experiment. Remember to subscribe to my channel, to like this video, check out possibly the website that's coming up, specialfeatures.net, and stay in touch, and more will come. Thanks for watching.